uniquely privileged to bear during so much of my life and duty.
I think he'll change. He is committed to his own level of service, and that will remain true.
The royal family is once again embroiled in turmoil, and this time, the drama has struck at King Charles's very heart. In a shocking twist, Prince William and Princess Anne have reportedly united to make a bold demand, cutting all ties with Queen Camilla's family. The ultimatum has left King Charles in tears, torn between loyalty to his bloodline and devotion to his wife. But what could have sparked such a ruthless move, and how will it reshape the monarchy? Today we uncover the emotional clash shaking Buckingham Palace. The palace shakeup. It was supposed to be an ordinary, calm day at Buckingham Palace, but something felt different. The mood was tense, people whispered, and the usual elegance of the palace seemed heavier than before. The reason was clear. Prince William and Princess Anne had delivered an unexpected ultimatum. They firmly demanded that Camilla's family be removed from the royal circle. This was more than just a personal request. It was a strong message. The monarchy's traditions and future mattered more than privilege or influence. For King Charles, it was deeply painful. The demand did not only concern Camilla, the woman who had stood by him for decades. It came from William and Anne, two of the most important voices in the royal family. William, as heir, represents the future, while Anne represents loyalty and tradition. Together they made it clear the monarchy must always come first, even before personal relationships. The emotional confrontation that followed showed not just hurt feelings, but a clear divide within the royal household, where love, duty, and power often clash. Days later, Buckingham Palace released a statement confirming changes to the royal trust, describing it as part of a larger plan to protect the monarchy's integrity. But what stood out was what the statement didn't say. There was no mention of Camilla's children, Laura Lopes, or Tom Parker Bowles. In royal terms, being left out is a quiet but powerful signal. They were excluded from the monarchy's long-term plans. For Camilla, this silence was heartbreaking. Her reputation had only recently improved, and her children had quietly been accepted in royal circles. Now they were sidelined. A harsh reminder that the monarchy set strict limits on outside influence. Almost instantly, whispers turned into headlines, as if the palace walls themselves had let secrets slip into the streets. Social media went into overdrive. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all echoing the same message. It's time to clean house, and Diana would be proud. For many, these weren't just clever slogans. They carried years of frustration. A sense that the monarchy was finally being forced to deal with accusations of favoritism and privilege. The quiet removal of Camilla's family from palace trusts was seen as more than just financial tidying. It was symbolic justice. The public's reaction was electric, but it had roots that went deep. For years, Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles had attended major royal events, sometimes even appearing ahead of blood relatives. To traditionalists, this bent the rules of royalty, giving outsiders honors meant for the crown itself. Their sudden exclusion wasn't only about money or protocol, it was about legacy. Queen Elizabeth's reputation and Diana's memory remained sacred, and the palace seemed determined to show it hadn't been forgotten. Television experts quickly pointed out that this wave of approval hadn't come out of nowhere. It had been building for decades, fueled by resentment over favoritism and by the unfinished story of Diana. Her legacy of compassion and courage became, once again, the moral compass shaping royal decisions. Every post, every viral video suggested the monarchy could still embody those values, even if past choices had tarnished them. Yet there was irony here. King Charles, often criticized in his early reign for hesitation, was now praised for a decision that also reminded the nation of the consequences of his past. The sidelining of Camilla's family was both restoration and reckoning. For the public, It was a long-awaited correction, but also proof that Diana's shadow still looms large over the throne, stronger than any attempt to rewrite history or chase popularity. In this careful balance of power, memory, and image, the palace managed something unusual. A quiet administrative move had become a declaration of values. Tradition, legitimacy, and legacy were reaffirmed, while whispers of scandal and favoritism were pushed aside. For now, Charles basks in rare approval, the nation briefly united, and Diana's memory once again at the very heart of Britain's imagination, shaping decisions from beyond the gilded gates. What untold secrets are fanning the flames of conflict within the royal household? Let's find out. Line drawn. Desperate plea. The palace had always worked by its own rules, guided by protocol, tradition, and unspoken tensions. But behind the golden doors, a quiet storm was forming, one that even the most experienced staff could sense. Princess Anne, known as the steady heart of the monarchy, was the first to notice. Calm and practical, she rarely let media chatter affect her. Yet she couldn't ignore how Camilla's children were suddenly appearing more often at royal events, slipping into circles that had always been carefully guarded. To Anne, something felt wrong. Her unease turned into determination after a private talk with Prince William, who felt frustrated, overlooked, and deeply disappointed. That was when Anne shifted from silent watcher to active defender of tradition. Almost instantly, her behavior changed. She no longer attended celebrations for Camilla's children, and any chance of appearing publicly alongside them was avoided with polite excuses about scheduling. Insiders knew the truth. Anne believed royal duties should not be casually shared, and tradition could not be bent. Her stance was not about personal dislike. For Anne, it was about bloodline, heritage, and the unwritten rules that had kept the monarchy alive through wars, scandals, and crises. To her, Camilla's family, no matter how polite, had crossed a line. Anne brought the issue directly to King Charles in a private meeting with senior advisors. Her words were firm but respectful. "You are the king. You are your mother's son." For the first time, Charles faced a painful choice: his loyalty to his wife or the traditions that held the monarchy together. Anne's warning was clear: to ignore these principles would risk the judgment of history. The public quickly sensed the shift. Headlines praised Anne's strength, calling her a reflection of Queen Elizabeth II's discipline and integrity. At the same time, Camilla's family came under heavy scrutiny. The balance inside the palace had changed. Anne had drawn an unshakable line. Quietly but firmly, she reminded the crown and the nation that duty, heritage, and history could not be compromised. In doing so, she became both a shield protecting the monarchy and a signal to all. Sentiment may sway hearts, but tradition still ruled the throne. A heavy silence filled Buckingham Palace, the kind that comes before everything quietly changes. Queen Camilla, usually calm under the constant weight of the crown, went to King Charles not with anger, but with fear. She was speaking as a mother, protecting her children, and as a wife trying to hold on to a fragile legacy. In a private room, away from cameras and advisors, her voice was gentle but urgent. She explained that Laura and Tom, her children, had never asked for titles or power. All they wanted was to belong in the family, to be recognized, and to feel secure within the royal circle. But behind her calm words was a deeper struggle. Camilla still carried the pain of being seen as the second wife, the old judgments that never faded, and the fear that history might treat her family as unimportant. Sources close to the palace said she broke down, whispering to Charles, "This decision, it will tear us apart." For a man who had faced years of public criticism and personal loss, it was a new kind of blow, one that touched his heart more than his reputation. Meanwhile, Outside the room, advisors moved nervously through the palace corridors. They pushed for caution, delay the decision, look for compromise, try to calm the storm before it grew. But then came the unexpected. A leak. A single document, released at just the right time, changed everything. What should have stayed private was suddenly public, setting off waves of speculation in the press, on social media, and across the world. Stories of loyalty, betrayal, and power struggles began to swirl around the monarchy. Camilla's absence from official events and statements only made things worse. Some said she had retreated to her private estate at Ray Mill, while others whispered she had been pushed aside, her role shrinking as a younger generation rose. William and Kate, steady and confident, began to take charge of new initiatives, signaling a shift in the royal future that could no longer be ignored. In the quiet that followed, Buckingham Palace became both a battlefield of emotions and a chessboard of strategy. What began as a mother's desperate plea for her children became something bigger, the turning point where loyalty, ambition, and love clashed, reshaping the monarchy from within. The leak, the plea, the silence, it was nothing less than a quiet revolution, and history was holding its breath. But what secrets are still hiding behind the palace gates? Let's find out. Unexpected palace secret. A single document, quietly uncovered, sent shockwaves through royal circles. Found in the Duchy of Cornwall archives, the draft turned long-held suspicions into fact. It outlined secret plans for managing royal estates and historic treasures, naming Laura Lopes as a possible trustee. Far more than just the casual role many had assumed. For outsiders, it was explosive proof. For insiders, it confirmed whispers that had circulated for years. It seemed Camilla had carefully placed her children at the heart of the monarchy's finances, not by asking for titles or attention, but by quietly weaving family ties into the kingdom's wealth and power. When King Charles saw the papers, he was stunned. He had believed personal loyalty and royal duty were separate, but the documents showed those lines had blurred. Some called it smart planning. Others saw it as betrayal. Princess Anne and Prince William, realizing the stakes, carried the papers straight to Charles, making it clear action was needed. The message was simple: the crown could not be seen as a private tool for family gain. History had already tested the monarchy with wars, abdications, and scandals, but public trust was still its most fragile foundation. Camilla stayed silent as news spread. Online, outrage exploded, hashtags trended, debates raged, and accusations of favoritism and manipulation filled the air. Headlines asked, was this smart modernization or a dangerous power grab? Some called for reforms, others demanded resignations. For the first time since taking the throne after Queen Elizabeth's death, Charles faced the real danger of losing the people's support. Emergency meetings were called, advisors argued over statements, and options were debated. But momentum had already taken over. The king stood at a turning point. To act against Camilla risked breaking her trust. To do nothing threatened the monarchy itself. Each passing moment reminded him that the crown's survival rested as much on public opinion as on bloodlines. Inside Buckingham Palace, the silence was heavy. The monarchy's future now hung in the balance, caught between ambition, loyalty, and the private choices of a family whose decisions had suddenly become the world's business. Can the old traditions survive such a shakeup? Or has a new order already taken root within the crown? And what, in the end, hides behind the quiet downfall of a queen consort? Let's find out. Camilla's quiet fall. The gates of Buckingham Palace had always been a symbol of power, tradition, and endless speculation. Over the years, they had witnessed moments of celebration, crisis, and drama. Yet rarely had silence itself felt so heavy, so full of meaning. What was once a lively stage now carried the weight of absence. The Queen Consort, once a visible and central figure in royal life, began to disappear. Not in a sudden, dramatic fashion, but slowly, almost quietly, as though she were fading into the background of the institution she had worked so hard to be part of. At first it was subtle. Palace courtiers and staff noticed small changes that unsettled them. Public engagements that once filled her calendar began to vanish. Where Camilla's presence used to be felt in meetings, events, and gatherings, there was now only an empty space. Familiar faces, like her children Laura and Tom, who had occasionally been seen walking the palace corridors, were no longer around. Even the formal dinners, once warmed by her laughter and conversation, had become quieter, more restrained, as though life had been drained from the table. Her absence was not only public, but also personal. Even King Charles, her partner in both marriage and title, seemed to drift away from her. Their once frequent appearances together became rare, and those who observed their private exchanges described them as distant, with conversations that were short, tense, and cold. Palace aides began whispering about the transformation they were witnessing. Camilla, once known for her sharp presence and clear authority, seemed to have changed. Her tone softened, her energy withdrawn, and her role shifted into something more ceremonial than commanding. Where she had once been a force at the heart of the monarchy, she now appeared to be only a figure standing quietly in the background. A few weeks later, the truth became clearer. A sealed document, signed and formal, was quietly placed in the Windsor archives. It marked the final step in a long, carefully planned transition. King Charles had approved a new trust protocol. From that moment forward, all matters of estate management, financial authority, and ceremonial influence would be placed firmly in the hands of direct heirs to the throne. The meaning was unmistakable. Prince William, along with his children Prince George and Princess Charlotte, now stood at the very center of the monarchy's future. Their roles were defined, their authority secured, and their position could not be challenged. For Camilla, this meant that the influence she had once imagined sharing was gone. The hopes of shaping the monarchy alongside her husband had dissolved almost overnight. What followed was deeply personal. A letter from Charles arrived, not through formal channels, not with royal seals or courtiers delivering it, but privately. It carried only his words. He expressed regret, sorrow, and a sense of inevitability. And then came the 7 words that ended her chapter. I had no choice. History required it. With that, the monarchy quietly reshaped itself without open conflict or public outcry. Prince William's importance grew. His role was more visible than ever. Princess Anne, long a symbol of stability, returned to active duties. Approval ratings for the monarchy began to climb as the public embraced a younger generation who seemed to lead with competence and empathy. Meanwhile, Camilla and her family stepped back. Their short but bold attempt to carve out a lasting place within royal life was sealed off as a closed chapter. The palace remained outwardly the same, its corridors still silent and dignified, its portraits still hanging, its traditions still followed. But the change was unmistakable. The Queen Consort had become little more than a figurehead, while the true weight of power and influence shifted back to the direct bloodline. So, what do you think about Prince William and Princess Anne's ultimate succession to King Charles? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.